What's up guys and welcome to Movie Dissect. Today we'll be going back to 1987. One of the most commercial movies of that year was The Untouchables, directed by Brian De Palma and written by David Mamet. It was also probably one of the best movies of that year. The problem with this movie though that the layers to this movie and the meaning behind the movie were kind of neglected by so many journalists, just because on the surface it's just another action movie. Like another action movie where extreme good guys are fighting extreme bad guys. But believe me or not, there is much more to the movie than meets the eye. It's actually about questioning the role of myth in forging the legends of the West. At the same time, it's a vivid homage to the Westerns, and especially to The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, the last great film by John Ford. Let's first have a look at the different themes of the film. Our first theme is the media. The movie starts with a bunch of journalists who interview Al Capone. The accompanying text is drawn up as the introductory paragraph of a newspaper's article. 1930. Chicago Prohibition has transformed into a city at war. Rival gangs compete for control of the city's billion-dollar empire or illegal alcohol, enforcing their will with the hand grenade and Tommy gun. It is the time of the gang lords. It is the time of Al Capone. A few scenes later, Ness is introduced to the press. When he later starts a solo action, there is a press photographer. Later, that man takes an embarrassing photo of Ness which his newspaper publishes. The media are so prominent in the first sequence. Journalists and the media are still present in Act 2 and 3, but rather limited. But it is not unimportant when they come back. Take for example the press photographer who makes the legendary photo of the Untouchables, which ends with a freeze frame, an image that closes very clearly the first act. There is also the crane shot in which a newspaper is delivered to Al Capone. And in the coda the journalist is present again. The second theme is the safety of children. The death of the child in the explosion is the start of the story. Ness, after a plea of a mother, will avenge her child. This difficult job becomes more and more personal, because later Ness, who already has a daughter, becomes father of a second child. Ness knows that his family is his weakness, and so he sends his wife and children out of the city. But that doesn't change a lot for Ness. Because during the station scene, a child is at the center of the battle between the gang of Al Capone and the duo Ness-Stone. That was originally a train scene, but by circumstances De Palma changed this in a station scene. He knew, however, that he had to have something in which a child is at risk. So he came up with a homage to Panzer Cruiser Potemkin. So that tribute to Eisenstein is definitely not gratuitous. Also on the side of Al Capone, children are important. During the first verbal confrontation between Ness and Al Capone, the gangster boss is outraged because the threat is in front of his son. Finally, there is another element with the Potemkin homage. The confrontation on the stairs in Odessa in 1905 has never occurred. It is pure Soviet propaganda, a Russian myth. So it's not that different from the clash between Elliot Ness and the hitman from Capone. That never occurred either. It is a creation of American mythmakers. The third theme would be a family or a clan as a basis of the American society. In the extension of the child theme is the theme of the family. Basically, The Untouchables is the fight between two families or clans or groups. One is a family of brothers, the other is a family of gangsters. Or even a family of heroic farmers opposite a family of well-dressed criminals who work for the king of the city. There are a few nice touches that hint to the sloppy-dressed Untouchables. Note the bombardment in the music from Ennio Morricone and the comments of the corrupt policeman at the address of Malone. What the hell are you dressed for? Halloween? Ness initially sends his first family away so he can do his job, but then he replaces his family with another one, so he still remains very vulnerable. It is the mentor Malone who points out, "It's nice to have a family." That sentence is at that moment mentioned for the second time. The first time was when Ness talked to a young policeman in a police car. And when the bookkeeper is sent away and the mentor is killed, Ness is completely in the corner. He knows now that his family will never be safe. What leads to his Old Testament-like dilemma during the crisis on the roof of the courthouse. Shall Ness kill his enemy in cold blood or uphold the law? The fourth theme would be the Chicago way. Ness is actually someone who follows the book. He approves the prohibition only because it is the law of the land. But the situation forces him to use different methods. The methods of his mentor, Sean Connery. The methods of the vigilante. Exactly in the middle of the film, Ness adopts those methods. When the Canadian police officer says, "I do not approve of your methods," Ness answers, "Well, you are not from Chicago." More and more Ness senses that he has to leave the law aside. but he only goes all the way after the double crisis moment. Ness wants to murder Needy already when the killer climbs down on the rope, but he doesn't do it. Then, Needy feels so safe that he starts to push the policeman with sadistic commentary. Ness does then what Dirty Harry would do. He kills Needy in cold, cold blood. It also makes clear that Needy is the real opponent of Ness, and that Capone is the real opponent of Malone. Nice touch, no? Ness Needy, Malone Capone. Needy was in reality Capone's successor, but his name was so helpful that Mamet gave him the part of the right hand of Capone. Now let's have a look at The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, a western made by John Ford in 1965. What's the story? A civilized lawyer, played by James Stewart, comes to a lawless town where a killer, Liberty Valance, played by Lee Marvin, can terrorize anyone without being punished. Stewart, representing the new America, wants to act within the law, but finds no support. Enter John Wayne, symbolizing the Old West. He becomes a kind of mentor to Stewart. In the end, Stewart adapts to the old ways of Wayne by taking up arms against Marvin, but very reluctant. He doesn't really want to shoot him. But they go to the duel, and he actually, somehow, ends up shooting him, even though he doesn't really know how to use the gun. By doing so, he becomes a legend. However, he discovers that it was not him who shot Valance, but Wayne. By doing so, his mentor Wayne saved not only the life of Stewart, but also made him a legend in the newspapers, so that he can put his stamp on American politics. And now, if you change James Stewart in Kevin Costner, John Wayne in Sean Connery, and Lee Marvin in Al Capone, you come pretty close to the Untouchables. However, David Mamet takes another turn at the theme of Liberty Valance. In the film by John Ford, the newspapers decide what the truth is, and they believe that the myth is more important for the public than the truth. One journalist even says, "When the legend becomes fact, print the legend." The press and John Ford want James Stewart to symbolize the new, civilized America, not a dinosaur like John Wayne. In the eyes of David Mamet, that did not work out. America in 1930 hasn't changed a bit from what it was in 1890. Corruption still rules, and untouchable men can do anything. So the Liberty Valance story repeats itself. But now, Ness, in opposition to James Stewart, accepts the lesson from his mentor Sean Connery and solves his problems with violence and cold-blooded killing. Where Stewart ends as a successful politician but a broken man, Ness Costner disappears in the crowd, sad for the loss of his friends, but happy that he can go anonymous to his family. That is what happened to Elliot Ness in real life. What is not true, though, is the violent way he uses to get Capone. Ness has never even touched a gun, let alone fired one. So, that's already a myth. But Mamet wants you to know that you are watching a myth and an illustration of the "when the legend becomes a fact, print the legend" quote. Like The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance tale, the Elliot Ness story is a typical American myth invented by the media. That's why Mamet focuses so much on newspapers and journalists. Mamet also added something more to that American myth. The concept of families fighting is part of the American soul, something Gangs of New York also illustrated. Deep in the soul of America there was always a violent rivalry with the other group or the other clan. Whether they were Italians, Irish, Jewish, Russian or others. Mamet tried to deepen that theme by going to the essence of the rivalry. Protecting innocence, symbolized by the child. The motivation of Ness to catch Capone begins when a girl is killed in a bombing. During his mission he always stumbles on the same problem. There are always kids in the way, either one's own child or a casual baby in a crib. So with the Untouchables, Mamet wanted to modernize the American hero and update the myth created in The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. And one more thing. The structure in The Untouchables follows the origin, the blooming, and the extinction of the modern American hero. Well, that is even reflected in the credits. Let's have a look. The Untouchables letters come from nowhere, grow monumental, and fade away, as Ness fades away in the last shot as he disappears into the crowd. Having said that, I hope I could convince you that The Untouchables is not just another ordinary movie. It's actually a terrific work about a popular American culture. And that's it for today. Thank you for watching. If you liked it, like. If you really liked it, please smash the subscribe button. And as usual, let us know in the comments what you think of the video. And I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.